Okay, hello everybody. Welcome back to SSK Cyber Club. For any new viewers joining us today, SSK stands for Smarter, Safer, and Kinder Online. We started this club to talk about big issues and to build community around this very important topic. Today's episode of SSK is being sponsored by GAME Education. GAME is perfect for educators and parents who want to help set their kids up to be better digital citizens. By using cutting-edge software, GAME helps users evaluate online content, build media and digital literacy skills, and flex their critical thinking muscles when consuming information online. As always, this episode is being recorded, so you can always go back, you can watch it again on the GAME Education YouTube page, and you can also share it with anyone else that you think might benefit from it. I'm your host, Paige Whitson. I'm a business and operations coordinator for a Kamloops-based software company. I also have 8 nieces and nephews, half of which are either just getting into the online space or they're already immersed in it. And a big portion of their time spent online is playing video games. For anyone who's watching that might have kids or work with kids, I'm sure that resonates with you big time. So today we're going to talk about video games, and we're going to touch a little bit on video game addiction and what to look out for and how to manage that. And GAME actually just recently put out a really great article on video game addiction. So I'm really excited to have Sean back here with us. Sean Campbell is a veteran in the publishing industry. He's been working in ed tech for over 15 years. So welcome, Sean.
Hey, Paige. Thanks so much for having me back yet again. I love it.
Of course. Yeah, happy to.
Yeah. Did you have a good last month?
I did, yes. Yep. The fall weather is sticking around, so getting to spend lots of time outside and got to spend a lovely long weekend enjoying Thanksgiving dinner.
Amazing. Yeah, same over here. So weather's amazing. And yeah, Thanksgiving's my favorite because there's no gifts. It's just food. It's all about food.
Food and loved ones.
Yes, exactly. So speaking of loved ones, you said you had 8 nieces and nephews, and they all love video games, or just a handful?
I'm sure they all love video games. Yeah. My youngest nephew is 4, and my oldest nephew is 18, and everyone else is in between there. So yes, I'm sure they all would love to play every minute that they could get their hands on it.
And have you run into that with your siblings and their kids, where there's some concerns about how much time they're spending? So maybe it's not video game addiction level, but it's hey, get outside, or hey, every time we turn it off, there's an issue. Have you had any of that within your family?
Yeah, for sure. And just a couple of weeks ago, I was at my sister's place, and she had to remind my nephew, her son that's 11, he's right in that sweet spot of like getting into it and getting that like rush of holy smokes, this is the best thing ever. So yeah. Lots of reminders to put it down. Definitely, yeah.
And that's an awesome age for today's episode, really, is because we're going to talk about what video game addiction really looks like. But that's a very small percentage of gamers, right? It's an addiction like, sadly, most others. It's very destructive to your family life, to your personal, physical, and mental health. What we see far more often is that sort of it's disruptive to your life. You know, it's starting to be a bit of an obsession. And parents are just concerned, and they want to start to change those habits that their kids are having right around that 11-year-old. That's when you're getting a little bit more freedom. Mm-hmm. Your friends are really into it. It is very fun for you. And so it's just making sure that it doesn't evolve into something that's maybe more problematic. And so today we're going to take a look at what does video game addiction really look like? What are some ways that we can start to talk to our kids or our students about video game addiction? And then what are some of the things we can do? Just some strategies that we can start to try and work into our everyday lives, so that not only if this is a video game addiction, but if it's just something that's trending in the wrong direction, we can start to take charge of it and make some changes. And just, you know, first off, if we talk about video game addiction and it's really obvious that your son or daughter has this, you should stop watching YouTube right now, and you need help, right? Like, get family, you need professionals involved. It can be a very complicated and destructive thing. This episode is really just to give you some tools when you're not at that really end of your rope stage. And so hopefully I don't have to say that, but you know, it's never a bad idea to kind of remind people that if you really are in that position, it's time to seek out some help from your school or from your family or church or professionals or whatever you have access to.
Yeah, that's a great comment. Thanks, Sean.
Yeah, you bet. Yeah. So just to put this all in perspective, so a lot of people love playing video games. So this is not a surprise to anyone, but I did a little digging, and the latest estimate is that 2.3 billion people play video games on a regular basis. So that's about 30% of the people on the planet, which is pretty impressive. And this industry generates over $180 billion a year, and that's growing exponentially every year. So there's a major incentive to make bigger and better and more addictive video games.
Mm-hmm.
And so where there's money and there's popularity, there can always be problems as well, right? And of course, the vast majority just have fun with it. But we have to look at people who are struggling with it as well. And so what is a video game addiction? And unfortunately, it has a lot of the same symptoms as any type of addiction: alcohol, drugs, you name it. And it's things like, is it negatively impacting your work, right? Are you playing video games all night so that you're late for work, you're tired, you're underachieving? There are social issues, especially family issues, right? You're hiding when you're playing video games. You're lying about when and where you're playing video games. And that's really destroying the trust within your family and really breaking down those relationships. That's a huge red flag. Things like, no matter how much they play, they want to play more. They could come off an 8-hour bender and they're still ready to go. You have to pry them away from it. Kids who show little motivation for anything else, that's a big one. And then, of course, if they're really neglecting their mental and physical well-being while they're playing games, that's a symptom. And one of the more interesting ones is if they understand that they might have a video game addiction or a problem, or that it's impacting their life, and they still don't want to change. They don't take any steps to really remedy it. That's a big one, because that shows some self-awareness, but you still can't stop, right? So even with these examples, it can be difficult to tell, right? So like we said, your nephew, who's 11, and my son, like, when we take the iPad away, it's a big deal. There's anger, there's, depression, there's all these emotions. And so there's a wide array of all of these things, right? So you can't really look at one and be like, well, my kid's got a video game addiction. That's not really what this is, right? It's really when all of those things are happening, and it's really, really having a negative effect on your life. And that being said, so if our kids are exhibiting some of these, and some may be more extreme and others mild, if you're concerned about it as a parent or an educator, it's absolutely a great time to start taking steps to put more balance into their lives and introduce them to things outside of gaming. And again, that's a good thing to do for our kids anyway, right? They should be enjoying a variety of different things, but it also gives them some strategies and some tools and some understanding of what might be going on in their life. And so, Paige, have you ever had a conversation with your brother or sister about like how they've addressed some of the gaming, not addiction, but just that gaming behavior with their kids, and tried to broaden their horizon at all?
I haven't, no. I think I haven't, because I wouldn't know how to broach that subject.
Yeah, and it's sort of one of those things that doesn't seem like a big deal. And again, with any type of problematic behavior, like massive addictions, right? There's lots of people who are like, oh, I have a glass of wine with dinner, and it's really a bottle. And on weekends it's 2 bottles, right? And I think when you see it in small doses, it kind of doesn't matter. It doesn't click that it might be a thing, and it absolutely might not be a thing. But it's hard to see from the outside. It's really like, it tends to be parents and educators who really are with that child kind of day in and day out, where you can see, okay, that was tough. It's getting harder, and that kind of thing. So how can we help these kids, right? And these are some ideas for parents and educators who want to help their child with a full-blown video game addiction, or even just improve their online and offline balance. And the first thing you can do is just start to talk about it, right? You communicate with them, and that's we sort of talked about this a lot on this show. Is like starting those conversations and having them be a key part of them really empowers those kids, right? And it's not going in there and saying like, this is how it's going to be, like this are the new rules and everyone will abide by them. I don't know for you. I'm sure you've had some experience in your life, but there's been some times where people have told me the right thing, but the way that they've done it has been too abrasive or too demanding, and you immediately push back against it. Like you must have had this at some point, right?
For sure. Yeah. And I think especially as an adolescent, when you're starting to like want to make more decisions for yourself and want to, try using a little more like autonomy, I guess. Having a parent or, a teacher come and put down these hard rules, it can, I think, maybe like trigger that kind of response. So yeah,
absolutely, right. And I think you could even think back on some times and be like, well, they were right, but it was at that moment you were like, anything you say to me, I'm not going to do. And it's really not the content of the message; it's the way it's delivered. And so instead of just telling them like, this is how it's going to be, it's an awesome opportunity to sit down and explore the topic, almost like not focusing on them, just thinking about this, like how much video gaming is too much video gaming in general. And so this is a great way to build some family bonds. It gives your child a sense of empowerment. It leads to more buy-in when we discover our own information. When we discover these solutions for ourselves, it has an enormous impact on how we internalize learning. So if someone tells you something at the front of a class, oftentimes if you don't really already believe that, it's really hard to make you change your mind. Whereas if someone says, okay, explore this topic, and you figure out for yourself what they said, you really internalize that learning. And so that's really what we're going for when we're talking to our kids about this, because that's the best way that we can get some buy-in on their end as well. So a nice strategy is also to approach these questions in the third person. So instead of saying, hey, you have a video game addiction, what are you going to do about it? You can start with things like, hey, do you have any friends who you think might be playing video games too much? And they can say yes or no, or you can just discuss like what that might look like. And then you can say, okay, well, how would you help them? And that gets them in a really powerful, like supportive role. So now they're helping their friend to deal with this issue they might have. But of course, that relates perfectly back to things that they might be more agreeable to because they put themselves in that powerful role of helping another. And you can get into things like, what are the symptoms of gaming? Because so many people are like, I don't have a problem about all kinds of things, right? And so when you see yourself reflected in some of those symptoms, without someone just telling you, it can be really powerful. Things like, what can we do that's not gaming? What can we do as a family that doesn't involve gaming? What do you think is a good amount of online and offline balance? How can we change our habits to get there? And again, it's not a you need to do this. It's really communal. So what are we going to do as a family to make this happen? Like, you're supported. We're here for you. Right? And these are all really important features of how you have that conversation. And it's just a really nice way to, like, we should be doing this on, I feel like, all kinds of topics, nightly, right? Nightly with our families, because it's empowering, but it's also, it can be a great way to build those bonds, instead of just kind of getting into that daily routine where, okay, I got to get dinner ready. Okay, we ate dinner. You guys get ready for bed. You know what I mean? You can really go through days without talking to your loved ones, even though you see them for hours. And so making a point of it and really exploring these big ideas can be beneficial for everyone. And then especially if you think that they might have an issue. And then what are some practical strategies that you can use to start to show them, okay, here's a great way to start to balance that video game usage with some things that aren't video gaming. And the most fun one by far is transitioning their love of specific games into outdoor activities or any activity, right? And so if your child is really into Call of Duty or Halo or some, like war type game, okay, well, we're going to go play paintball. We're going to...
That idea.
Yeah, or if you're a hunting family or maybe you're shooting targets or something like that, right? But it's us together and we're not gaming, we're going out and we're doing this thing. And maybe it's Madden, right? So okay, perfect. We're gonna go throw the football around. Maybe it's more of like a fantasy style problem solving game. Okay, there's escape rooms. There's like Amazing Race style things. There's treasure hunts you could build for yourselves. Like there's so many things that you can do that kind of mimic that same pattern of those things that your kids are into, but as a family friendly activity that gets them outside and away from gaming. So that's the best one. So I hope people do that.
Yeah, that's so great. And that's why I've been saying, just don't play video games. No video games tonight. Like redirecting that focus and their energy onto another activity. That's such a great idea.
And it might be something they really enjoy and they would never know, right? Like paintball, if you like a first-person shooter game, like paintball is a perfect activity for you. And there's tournaments around it. Like you can make this your activity of choice and do something with it. So yeah, it's kind of a cool way to try something new as a family and just kind of get away from that gaming constantly.
Nerf guns, that would be another alternative too for maybe the younger kids who aren't quite big enough for paintball.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, totally. Or like, water guns or, what I mean? Yeah, there's lots of cool opportunities that to just re kind of model what they're already doing. Number two is like we talk about all the time. You have to model your online, offline behavior as adults too. We see this all the time where it's like, hey, you have a problem with video games as you're staring at your phone, for the fifth hour in a row. So it's really important for you to model and to get involved in all these things. Like it shouldn't be you need to do this or you need to get outside. You need to do some exercise. Get involved with them. It's going to make it more of a lifestyle for them. You're going to be more involved in their life. They're going to be much more likely to follow through with it. And then, the final one, it's kind of what we've talked about as maybe not being the best strategy, but have those times where it's just like, there's no screen time. And again, you can make it for the whole family. It's like, okay, dinner's between 5 and 7. There's no screen time for anybody. We're going to talk. We're going to sit. Having it after a certain time at night is kind of nice too, because sometimes when we're tired, we just get sucked into our phone and we spend 2 hours scrolling at the end of the day, which isn't always the best use of time. Or one of my favorite is just to go nuclear and you just unplug the Wi-Fi. It's and you can do that on family trips. You can do that after a certain time of night, but it just makes it so that your phone is so tempting, right? It really is like, oh, I'm kind of bored for half a second, or I want to check if this place is open or what have you. And you don't just do that one thing. You usually like check 4 or 5 apps and spend more time than you thought you would on it. And so it's just another way to say, you know what, I'm going to take away that temptation completely for everybody. And it's just another way to say, okay, well, like we can't game. We're not gaming right now. We're talking or we're outside or what have you. And just to really reinforce that balance in their life. And as always, shout out to Kermode. Like I know they have some of this information in their user guides, but as you're looking at some of those questions that we talked about, again, you're going to be online, right? You're going to be looking for answers together, and Kermode really helps you evaluate those pages with their software, and they're going to expose you to a bunch of different digital literacy topics. And so not only are you working on sort of that online offline balance with video games, you and your kids are going to be exposed to all different kinds of digital literacy, media literacy topics. And so it just really helps you in all facets of your online life, your digital life. So thanks as always to Kermode for sponsoring this and letting me talk away on here.
Yeah, so great. Thank you for that, Sean. I know that's a big topic, video games and video game addiction. I'm sure we could talk for hours about it, but I think you've provided some really tangible, very accessible options for parents and teachers, just to help manage that for the kids, because it's really hard. And I think you made a really good point off the top that these video game companies in the industry, like it is so vested in making video games addicting. It's almost a miracle if, our kids or anyone, because people of all ages play video games. It's almost if they don't get addicted, because I don't want to say that's the goal, but I think maybe for some companies, it kind of is the goal. They want to get
Yeah,
new.
and I don't think they'd frame it like that, right? They would say, "Oh, we just want the most enjoyable video game possible," which is fair enough. We all kind of do that in our jobs. We want people to enjoy what we're doing, but an element that for people with maybe more addictive personalities is that they get sucked in. And yeah, I read a book called The War on Normal People, which is a terrible title, but I forget the author. But he talked a lot about how, yeah, it was really like middle-aged men or, late 20s, early 30s men who are leaving the workforce and really just playing video games. And they're at their parents' house and it was this huge section of the US society. And it was all these things that young men used to get. And it is like the vast majority of people who have video game addictions are men. It's not even close. Like I think it's 90-10 or something.
Wow.
And so his theory was that young men used to like to have jobs because there was like some camaraderie there. There was a sense of accomplishment. They used to like going out because there was a thirst for like excitement, which sometimes was getting in a fight or like something like it was a little bit destructive, right? But it was like they got all of that out by being out of the house and having a job, and like you couldn't go to the bar and dance and get in a fight if you didn't have any money. And so now with video games, you can sit on a couch and you can get camaraderie and you can get a sense of accomplishment and you can get like that violence itch out. And it's all wrapped up in these really realistic video games that you can play online with your friends. And so there was this cottage industry around long-term disability. And there was a lot of males at that age who are on long-term disability. Like it's more than any in the history of the world. And it sort of ties in with this rise in gaming for that age too. It was fascinating.
Yeah, that sounds fascinating.
Yeah, sad and fascinating.
Yes. Well, I'm very grateful for all of your wonderful tips. So thank you so much for sharing those. So yeah, we talked about video game addiction, what to look out for, maybe some of the negative impacts of video games. Let's talk about something positive.
Love it.
So what can we do online that will be good for our brains?
Yeah, there's lots of stuff, right? Like I always try not to demonize anything digital or online because I love it. But there's so many amazing like okay, well this sort of goes against everything we've been talking about. But there's so many brain games, right? There's so many trivia games. There's so many collaborative puzzle games. There's chess. You know what I mean? There's all of these problem solving and competitive games where you're really thinking through different situations and thinking critically about what's happening. And all of that is tremendous exercise for your brain. And of course, you can do all of that offline as well, and you should. But it is available to you online as well. So it's so easy to access. And like even think of just learning languages, right? Like something like Duolingo is a free app where you can start to learn new languages. It's fabulous for your brain. Yeah, there are so many cool tools out there now that are really beneficial. It doesn't have to be all negative by any means at all. Your opportunities for personal growth online are unlimited, right? Your access to education, your access to books and learning online. There really is no end to the ways that you can improve your brain and give your brain lots of exercise. You just have to make sure that it's in moderation and you're mixing it in with other things offline. And I would always say make it social. And I don't think that goes for everybody, but that collaboration, that creativity piece really thrives when you are doing these things with someone else, a real human, online or off.
Yeah, totally. Get the family in there.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's kind of a cool way to stay in touch with people too. I have lots of friends who play chess with their buddies, that are in Germany or South Africa or whatever. And it's sort of their, you take half an hour out of the day and play with your friend and you talk trash and, you're kind of learning and keeping that connection together, which is amazing, right? That's fabulous.
That is. Yeah, I love that. Awesome. Thank you.
You bet.
Okay. And we do have a question from the audience. So this week, the question is, how do I balance being an informed citizen and consuming too much media?
Yeah, Go for it.
Fun. Yeah, I feel like I really I swing back and forth with just not consuming any media and kind of putting my head in the sand because it's too much, it's too negative, and then being too consuming it too much, being too in the know.
Yes. Yeah, it's like a brutal question, especially these days, right? Because you absolutely want to be an informed citizen. I want to know what I can do to help with climate change or who to vote for or all these huge issues. But you can absolutely get sucked into just watching video after video or scrolling through news clipping after news clipping. And I mean, we've shown time and time again that is not good for you, right? Like to just be bombarded by like it is predominantly negative, right? So taking all of that on your shoulders is tough. Yeah, and I've had this conversation with friends. I'm like, what is the disadvantage of me just tuning it all out? To be honest, like my impact on a lot of these things is minimal. Like all the things that I could have the biggest impact on for me are local, right? So I can help out at my son's school. I can, clean up garbage. I can do these like really tangible, helpful things, and they have nothing to do with the media I consume online. And so, how do you do it? It's so hard because everyone's different, right? For me, I honestly try to read the newspaper once a week. I feel pretty strongly that the news doesn't change that fast. We get bombarded with all of these things every day, but if you tune out, try tuning out for a week and see how much is different with the headlines that you're reading. Is it still war in Ukraine? Is it still something about an election? Is it still, something about, inflation? Like honestly, take stock of it and see how long you can go between really absorbing a lot of media and things actually changing. Like how much of the news is really different each time. And it's really eye-opening because you're like, I used to look at this for hours every day, and there's stuff in there that's new for sure. But it would be an interesting exercise for people to do, is just like tune out for a certain amount of time and see if you missed anything. See if you're out of conversations with your friends who are plugged in. And if there's things you need to know, really focus on that one thing. Don't get sucked into the everything around it. Everything that's deliciously clickable along the side that has the cool photo and the salacious headline kind of thing.
Yes, the clickbaity headlines.
Yeah, what do you think? Like, that's a tough one. I don't have a great answer. It's sort of everyone's each their own.
For sure. I think that's a great idea, though. I think taking a little break is probably a good way to kind of gauge where are you at. Are you maybe overdoing it with consuming? Are you underdoing it maybe? And yeah, using different mediums to inform yourself and get caught up on the news. I really like that idea as well. I don't think we even get the paper here where I live. I'll have to look into that, see if I can start getting the local newspaper.
Yeah, or I mean, you could look at it online. I find the actual print paper version, which isn't great for trees, I guess. And I'm a total tree hugger. I love trees, but it isn't. But it is just that format. It's slow. It's everything about it is slow. Like it means that they wrote it yesterday, at least, and some of these things took time to put together. It's not so reactionary. And don't get me wrong, newspapers can be reactionary. I'm not giving newspapers a pass. But it's just everything about it is slow and not distracting, right? It's not on my phone. I flip the page and I read, and and there's nowhere for me to go otherwise. I can't. And when it's done, it's done, and then it's in the recycling, and I'm on my way. So, it's something that's worked fairly well for me. I would say I still check the news every day, like just a quick, maybe like 5 or 10 minutes of the headlines, because I'm very curious about what's going on out there, but. I don't know that how much I would miss if I didn't, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. And I think, when I think about what I see online on Facebook, for example, because I subscribe to 1 or 2 local news outlets. So the articles pop up on my newsfeed, and oftentimes, they just like repeat each other. And I was just thinking I could unsubscribe and make an active effort, once a day to go to their page and just scroll past all of the headlines and just pick the couple that are interesting and feel like new information instead of it just bombarding my newsfeed.
Yeah, and that's an interesting distinction too. Like paying more attention to local news might actually have a bigger impact on you being happy, because those are things that you can change, like you can have an impact on. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you are absorbing global stuff, it's very scary and very big, and your impact on the war in Ukraine is very small, right? And it's not like you can't help in some way, but it's not like, hey, like we need people to come out and help with the Boys and Girls Club or something like that. Like it really, yeah. Because I would say I do consume a lot more local news now than I did like the first 35 years of my life, and I think it's been good. Like because then you're not. I think it's a bit more positive generally too. There's like this is going wrong, but also this restaurant's opening, and you're like, that's awesome. I want to check it out. And so that's to me, that's a positive news story. You're helping a local business, and it's exciting in a positive way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, even with these global issues that come up, they'll trickle down and make its way to your local news, and probably through a local lens. So maybe there's a fundraiser going on to support Ukraine, for example, and that's community. So then you can get involved and you can make that impact.
That's true. Actually, we had some refugees from Ukraine that were staying at Sun Peaks, like we were talking about, and they had some people's places, but they were there's lots of information about, hey, if you have jackets, if you have boots for their kids, like these things, and that's excellent, right? You can tangibly do something very easily and quickly to help someone who needs it, which is awesome.
That is awesome. Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah, that's all I got for you today, though. That was great. That seemed like a really deeper episode. Like there was harder questions in that one. That was good.
Definitely. Yeah, we covered some great ground today. So thank you so much, Sean. It was a pleasure, as always, to have you with us today.
Yeah, thanks so much, Paige. Have a wonderful month, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Sounds good. Thanks, Sean. Okay, well, thanks, everyone. That's our episode today. We appreciate you tuning in and, again, sharing this with anyone that you think might like to watch it and might learn some things. And we would love if you would join us for the next SSK Cyber Club. That will be on Wednesday, November 9th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you'd like to subscribe to Commodity YouTube channel, you can keep up to date with us and our show and all the awesome updates from our friends at Commodity Education. And if you would like more information on Commodity and how it can help you and your family or your school or your public library to become smarter, safer, and kinder digital citizens, contact their amazing team at info@commodityeducation.com or visit www.commodityeducation.com. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time.